How are you, Dina?
Hey, Nita. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let's see. Let's see what's going on. Here, we're in there.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
No, no, I can't hear you.
Cannot.
Let's see. Oh, maybe I just need to turn up my microphone.
Let's try
Yeah,
that.
that's all. I can hear you fine.
Okay, beautiful. So, how are you?
So, good.
Yeah.
So
This
we
summer.
have about a little over 50 people signed up. So
Great. Yeah.
probably get around 20 who will show up.
Right.
So how have you been? I haven't talked to you in a while.
You know what? It has been so busy. This summer just flew by, and like I blinked and it's gone.
It sure has, hasn't it? It seems like you get up on Monday and the next thing you know, it's Friday and you're ready to start another week.
Yeah. And like I know everybody says that, but I really mean it this time. Like this summer has been a blur. This past year, I was even just thinking back to some things that was going on last year, and it was like, wow, like this has been crazy, but good
Well,
fun.
I suppose it's good to be busy, but
Yes.
sometimes you need a break now and then.
Yeah, I talked to Mark Cross, he's my mentor, and
Uh-huh.
he really helped. Like a couple months ago, I called him to get some advice, and he's always really good at giving me some good direction and making me think. And so, I've been able to start building out a new strategy for business development. So I've been working on refining that,
Mm-hmm.
and I have an intern working with me. She's great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and then I'm just wrapping up. I was filling in on an interim HR director role. She was on maternity leave, so I'm just wrapping that up.
Oh,
So
so that on top of everything else, I'm sure.
yeah,
A
yeah,
big job.
yeah. So I'm looking for, and I have a part-time job on top of that. I've been working with they're a data analytics organization that
Hmm.
analyzes things like energy usage, like grid load on your energy source, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
anything energy related around power.
Hmm.
Um, and they work a lot with climate change and sustainability groups and people that are in, with different development activities.
Mm-hmm.
It's so super cool, man.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, I'll tell you, the weather we've had lately certainly tells you we got to do something about climate change.
Yes. And the things I've learned just working with them, it's been unbelievable. And they're a great group. They're a small nonprofit and
Mm-hmm.
they're growing, so really great time to be with them. So
Well, I
that's the
think that so many small businesses start out and think they can handle the HR stuff themselves, and get
Yes.
themselves in hot water because they don't.
Well, a lot of times they just end up drowning in the work.
Mhm.
They underestimate it grossly. Um, but that's the thing I love about consulting is I get to
Yeah,
work with all these great people.
I know. When my clients say they're interested in hiring somebody, I say, do you realize all the regulatory stuff you have to go through? It's just one employee puts so much additional work on you.
It does. It does. And the way that things are changing with our economy, it's going to be very different moving forward. That
Mhm.
definition of employee is quickly redefining itself, and it's to the point where companies can't expect that people are just going to have one job.
Yeah,
People are going to do a lot more. The gig
right.
economy has been outpacing full-time openings for a while.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I think a lot of younger people, they don't worry about job security. Um, they want to do what they're interested in, and they're willing to work for three or four different companies if they need to get the work that they're interested in.
And I don't blame people. Like especially at this point in my career and in my life where, I just think of this is like my fourth iteration of my business, and just to think about where I was 15 years ago trying to launch something and now where I'm at, it's like, whoa,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
unbelievable. So the journey has been incredibly exciting. And, my corporate experience has certainly helped give me a lot of what helps me navigate these waters.
Mhm.
I like corporate money, but I don't like corporate
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
I
So,
know. And, they don't have any loyalty to their employees anymore. So
yeah, they
you
don't. And
think,
corporate
yeah.
HR, honestly, Nita, corporate HR, it kind of sucks. And I'll tell you why. It's not for some of the reasons that people think. Like dealing with people's problems and complaints and all that. Honestly, that's not even the worst part of the job. The worst part of the job is you get undermined by like your own people in HR, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your role is based 99% of your effectiveness is based on your ability to influence, because I don't
Hmm.
have a whole lot of authority. I can only pull the card when I need to pull the card, which is legal or compliance or business,
Hmm.
right? But most times I don't have to, but it's mostly based on my credibility and influence. And when you get that buy-in and you build that relationship, and then your senior HR person swoops in on things
Hmm.
that you've already done or that you're capable of doing, it's just so demoralizing. And especially for me, I've been doing this for almost it's 24 years now.
Oh my.
I don't need anybody to tell me how to do this job. And I'm
Yeah.
just being very honest, not being, rude or in any way.
Yeah.
Just, I don't need you for that. I just need you to support me and help me navigate and understand what's going on around me so I can
Hmm.
prioritize, you know?
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I know that the world is changing when it comes to employment for sure.
Oh, yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And there's a lot of great things that this new, because put it this way, when I came into the workforce was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, from when you even think about leadership, like we used to call it your boss, right? That now we call it your manager. Now we're moving on to your team lead. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
just even
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
we refer to management has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a real effort to reduce the hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not uh, it's not effective if you don't have the right people in the right places.
You hit it on the nail on the head with that. And that's what I clean up a lot of in especially smaller companies where they
Mhm.
get kind of pie in the sky about things like we want to have an employee group that influences company decisions, and like you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
we gotta put all this into some context because you're gonna have, like you said, you gotta have the right people, and they think that people that expressed interest makes that is what makes them the right people. They don't, they ignore
Yeah.
that these are
Yeah.
actual skill sets.
Yeah.
So
I had a client that I met with a few times. He works for a company. It's they help medical device people work through the FDA requirements and get approval.
yeah.
And he's the second in command, and the owner, who's the CEO and also the CFO,
Mm-hmm.
is a micromanager and has, I think, unrealistic expectations. And this guy's responsibility is to, get the business.
Mm-hmm.
And he's apparently been very successful at it, but he said the owner is trying to push because he wants to sell the business. And so he sets goals that are unrealistic, and then he complains when they don't meet them, even though he's told him that it's unrealistic and they're not going to be able to meet them. So uh, it's a challenge. So
Yes.
yikes, I see it's 6:59. So I'm going to bring up my slides
Okay. I'm just gonna.
and I'll do my little score slides and then I'll get you started. Let's see, I need to
Set
do
my light here.
um,
Maybe a little higher if I can get it.
slideshow. Get this from the beginning. Okay, and now I'm going to broadcast. So we will get started. Okay, good evening to those of you who are just joining us. We'll wait a few minutes to let people log on and then we'll get started. Hmm. Well, maybe I'll go ahead and get started with the score slides and people can continue to log on. So welcome. We're very excited today because we have an excellent presenter on human resources and the legal issues associated with that. But before we get started with that, I'm going to give you a little public service announcement about SCORE. And my name is Anita Kayat. I am a SCORE mentor with the Cleveland office. And we have approximately 100 mentors in the Cleveland office, which represents a small number of the total of 10,000. SCORE actually has the largest network of free volunteer small business mentors in the country. So no matter what stage your business is, we can find a mentor. If you feel like you have a unusual business and we don't have somebody in the Cleveland office who can help you, we have access to those other 10,000 people across the country to find somebody who has the background necessary to help you. So if you go to our website, it's very easy to request a mentor to help you. And if you haven't done so, it's a good idea to have somebody who can talk with you, help you, and bounce your ideas off. So our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities, and we do this through mentoring and education. We hope that you, as a small business owner, will get the support that you need to be successful in starting and growing your business. We are well aware that small businesses drive our national economy. Over 95% of businesses are small businesses. So here in the Cleveland area, we've noticed in the last few years that the downtown area is revitalized, and that's primarily because small businesses have been moving in and taking over and offering their wares and encouraging people to come downtown. So these numbers are from our last fiscal year, and this is for the total score. We've helped over 30,000 new businesses get started and over 150,000 new jobs created. So we're pretty excited about that. We have people from all walks of life participating in our mentorships. About 10% of our, excuse me, of our clients are veterans, and over 50% are women. So I'm pretty pleased about that. We have a code of ethics, which is primarily to protect you as our clients. Every volunteer who works with us signs an agreement annually saying that we are not permitted to make any money from any of your clients. We can't use your data for any commercial reason. And of course, your data are all confidential and protected. This is a copy of our website. If you look at the website, you can click here and find a mentor. You can go and find a local workshop. There are also about 80 some recorded workshops. So if you don't have time to attend a workshop, you can go to our website and find the recording. And we encourage you to do that if you're looking for something in particular and you don't see a webinar coming up. Our services are free. We never charge for our mentoring, our workshops, or any services we provide, primarily because our work is supported by the Small Business Administration, but also a good portion of our costs are covered by local companies that want to see small businesses succeed. Here is a QR code that will take you to our website or a link. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm very happy to introduce Dina Davis, who is a human resource professional and expert, and we're delighted to have her with us this evening. I'm going to just turn things over to you, and it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Nita. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Give me just 1 second to get us started. Get our slideshow going. All right. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Dina Davis. I will be your facilitator tonight for the HR for Small capital ALL businesses. And so, one of the reasons I titled it that is because HR is for all businesses. A lot of times we think when we're small businesses or if we're just starting, we don't need HR or we're not sure what type of HR we need. And hopefully today in our presentation that you'll see that again, HR is for all business, including small business. All right, so just a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Dina Davis. I have been actually Nita and I. It would have been great if you guys could have chimed into our conversation right before we started. I've been in HR now for 20 plus years and have had a really wonderful career. Get to work with really amazing people, and that experience I try to bring through in these types of workshops because again, I live the world of HR and I've also am a business owner myself. So understanding it from both perspectives hopefully will help you to see again the value of investing in either education or the right resources to really help move your business forward. And you're probably like, wow, HR move my business forward, what does that mean? So hope you'll definitely learn that before we leave. So, as a business owner, again, I'm in the same seat. I'm still HR, but I also am a business owner. And, the things that are on my mind, and it's just unbelievable. And again, this was something Anita and I were just talking about of all of the responsibilities that you have, the different priorities, how they shift through the day. And really, when it comes down to it, again, this is, I call it like your baby. Your business is your baby that you are bringing into this world. So you're cultivating it, you're working through processes and procedures, you're partnering with people to complement your skills, or like in my situation, I'll partner a lot of times with other firms to go in on bid opportunities because they have skills or strengths that complement my business. So that's business development and partnerships, right? So all of these things, again, as we know as business owners, they are constantly top of mind for us. And as you progress and even think about your business, whether you're just starting out or you're already in a really good run phase, or you're thinking about kind of scaling down or selling, whatever your strategy is, there's always the parts of the job, we'll say, as a business owner that you really gravitate to. Maybe you have a background in that, you have certain skill sets, and so wearing that hat isn't as stressful. But as you grow and as you continue to bring on more work, and then you need to hire people, and you're going to start moving people from contractors to full-time employees, like all of these changes again fall under human resources. And just having the right expertise in call it your back pocket is definitely something that can help you to move your business forward, because HR is with you at every part of what we call the employee life cycle. So give you a little context. When I talk about HR and human resources, the first thing I say, and you'll hear me say this often, HR is a function, not a person. Okay. Now, sometimes they can be one and the same, but you as a business owner, first think about HR as a function, because when you think about it that way, it helps you to understand the levels of responsibility you have as it relates to these things that I'll go over here on this life cycle. So it's not necessarily a person may fill some or many of these roles, but they may not fill all of them. And that's why I say that think about HR as a function, not a person. So the function of HR is just like figure like a department of your company. You have sales, you have marketing, you have IT, these are all departments. They are functions. And human resources is that as well. And it's important to think about that, especially as a business owner, because you're looking at this as a part of your business, not like an employee would look at HR. So, what we do from the HR perspective is we're going to help you to navigate things like your organizational development strategy, your culture, comp and benefits, recruiting and hiring, onboarding, performance management, training. All of those things that fit in the life cycle fall in the expertise areas of HR. And so, as I'm talking about moving and advancing your business, you've heard me say that a few times, is because all of these things are going to be necessary to help you do that. Most times because you're going to need or already have people. And so sorting through those requirements, also, like, particularly, I love the organizational development side of things and the culture building, because this is really where you get a chance to shape the organization to be the type of organization you wanted it to be. So when you set off and you said, I want to start my own business, in your mind you have this vision of what the culture's like, and your values and principles that you would like to instill, and the way in which that business is going to operate. And it brings me to mind, actually, one of our score mentor, or they were one of the mentees. They were starting this business, and it was actually a very creative business, and it's really doing well. It's been a few years now since I talked with them, but it's a hybrid concept. And they created this great business model, really attractive, has to do with dogs, and it has like a happy hour and dog kennel combination. Really, really cool. Long story short, the folks that started that business, it's their labor of love. It's something that they really were passionate about and brought it to life. And they both came from environments where maybe they weren't always the great employee friendly environment. So they sought off to create an environment that was employee friendly. So they really wanted more of that family feel. They wanted to help develop people and help them grow in their careers. And so all of that, it does come, you want to do that with intention. Now, will a lot of it evolve organically? Sure, but there are ways to help to make sure that you're developing and progressing your business in a way that supports those values and upholds them. And then you also, if you go over to the life cycle, make sure we're hiring people that share that vision, and that we're developing people for the growth of the organization. These are all the things that I talk about as levers that you'll start to learn how to and when to pull in your business to be able to get the results you need. And so this gets a little bit into how HR is structured. So when you think about HR, if you haven't been a business owner, or a lot of times senior leaders or executives in corporations, a lot of times will work very closely with HR and have a broader sense of some of the responsibilities we have. But what I do is I like to explain the differences in terms of all of the things that HR provides. So this again helps you to understand why I say it's a function, not a person, because there are different types of expertise. So at the bottom of our pyramid here is our foundational, and I'm sorry, my bar is there. Okay, this is our foundational HR. And this is where we're talking about compliance. So that's what, again, most people know HR for, is we have certain laws and regulations that we need to comply with as employers, and we need to somehow keep up with all that. Okay, that's the compliance side of things. Then we move up to another layer where we call HR admin. HR admin is also a level that a lot of folks are familiar with as well, because most of us have been an employee at least once in our life, right? And so being an employee, you've probably had HR do your orientation or handle benefits or some other things for you, payroll, possibly. Sometimes we arm wrestle that with a finance function or an accountant, but nonetheless, we are usually involved pretty closely with that. So that's your HR administration. And that's where we're talking about tracking, maintenance, reporting, all of those things. It's the administration piece that helps us to get our arms around all that, make sure that that we have the right systems and processes to manage we'll call it the workload of that particular organization. Now, as you grow, that then becomes more complex, and it becomes what we call HR operations. HR operations is, again, where you're looking at things like HR systems. Maybe we have a payroll system. Now we have a HRIS system, which is human resources information system. Maybe we have something like that, or we are growing quickly and we want to add additional benefit options to expand our offering. So think about that as, again, as you continue to grow, that HR operations side becomes more prevalent in your business, because we got to then make sure that we are effectively managing complex or large volumes of transactions and activities, right? So that's an area where that all starts to come together. You'll hear a new contemporary term for this called people ops or people operations, and that's HR ops, right? Next level up from that, and these are, you'll see my eyes light up on these. Two of them that are, I love to kind of play in the space a lot of is HR business partner. So an HR business partner is someone that, again, it is exactly what the word says, business partner. So what we do is we really attach ourselves to your business strategy, and then we then translate the people parts of that into strategy and or action, right? So if again, I have a client, their strategy is they want to double their size within the next 2 to 3 years. Now, obviously, that's going to require a business development component to drive that growth, which I also help to hire that role, by the way. But I'm also looking at how do I scale the organization in a way to prepare ourselves for that growth. So performance management systems, rewards and recognition, again, the benefits offerings. I'm now doing things little by little to lay that foundation for the growth so that when, I say not if, but when the organization is going to grow, I am ready for that activity instead of HR being the bottleneck if and when your company's growing. So again, that's where your business partner, HR minded person comes in play. And then at the top of our pyramid is HR strategy. And so again, that's your strategic direction, that's your organizational structure, like I talked about earlier, your culture, your vision, your values, all of that comes out of HR strategy. And so if you look over to the left, I explain these in terms of the fundamentals and the growth enablers. So those fundamentals, the must-haves, those are your risk mitigation tools. That's your HR admin. That's your HR compliance. Everyone, if you hire anybody, you're going to have some level of activity in those two layers of the HR pyramid here. As you grow and as you take on, again, your organization is growing and building, right? That's where you get into some of these growth enablers. So, like HR ops, HR business partner, and HR strategy. Now, this doesn't mean that you ignore any of those items if you're not quite where you want to be growth wise. And like I just gave the example, my client is very smart, right? They hired me, right? So I'm that's a little bit of a joke, but not. But my point is we're not quite at the level of growth, but they understand the need to invest in certain things as it relates to the people and the culture and the development of that in order to be ready. So these are, again, when we think about this, it's not that you want to make sure that you're not ignoring any part of HR. But again, understanding that you'll be in a different place at any given time. And I'll show you a breakdown of what sort of things you'll likely have on your plate for an HR perspective once you're in a different phase. So I'll go through that in just a minute. Actually, I think that's the next slide here. But my point I want to just close out on here is, again, you don't want to ignore that some of the more growth enablers, but you may or may not need heavy lifting in terms of talent, or you might need, some of my clients, they need me for things periodically, other clients need me for things daily, right? So it just depends on where they're at in their business growth or what phase of business they're in. Okay. All right, so let's talk about HR in the phases of the business. And this was what I was just referring to, and hopefully this will give you a little bit of context. So when you're building your business, when you're in a good run phase, as you're growing, or even as you're sunsetting, because everyone's strategy is a little different. We were just talking about Anita, one of her friends, is they were building a business with the intention to sell it, right? So they could be going through these phases pretty quickly because that's their end goal, right? So when you think about that, your HR function is going to grow with the needs and the phases of the business, meaning whatever phase of business you're in, you're typically going to see more or less of different functions in that pyramid that we just looked at here. So as a new or a foundational, and you're building your business, those types of things that are definitely going to be on your plate are going to be the compliance, the admin, making sure that, again, you have all the right forms and paperwork and you have good reporting on that, because sometimes you have to file reports. If you're a government contractor, you might have affirmative action requirements, right? EEO requirements. So there's all these different things, and it does not matter how many employees. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many employees you have. So if you have one, you probably are going to have some levels of, you will have levels of compliance, put it that way. As you run, you're going to get more into, like I said, the systems, the processes. You'll probably get more focused on training and development, because now you're like, hey, I'm going to develop and grow my people so that we can take on more work, or whatever the your objectives are. And grow, that's when we get into leadership development, incentive compensations, performance management, like all of those things that we are very used to seeing in bigger companies. That's where you're getting into that growth phase. And then people that are in that sunset, or they're in a, can have a different strategy, they're more concerned about things like succession planning and change management, or perpetuation, severance plans, things of that nature. So as you think about your business, one, just know that whatever phase you're in, there's going to be common HR, again, things that are common. This hopefully, again, can help you to see into some of that, because then you don't have to feel the pressure to, I'm still in the build phase, but I'm thinking about leadership development. Well, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't or you can't, but really at this point in time, you're still doing a lot of your foundational HR. So this can give you a bit of a perspective of how to plan for this function to grow as your business grows. And as you look at your business plan, you're likely going to see how this aligns very well, because you'll start to then align those strategies and be able to see how the people parts fit with that. So this is a really great slide. A lot of folks really like this one in particular, because again, it gives you a good breakdown. All right. So when you're talking about hiring human resources, I like to just give you again a little bit of guidance on that. And the way that we typically work, again, you see that pyramid. Before I get into that, one thing about the pyramid I just want to share is this is not a hierarchy in terms of compensation, skill level, etc. What I mean by that is this pyramid, what I'm trying to represent is really more around the bulk or the volume of time you spend on certain things, more so than the ranking or hierarchy. So you can have someone who's HR compliance. A lot of times those are attorneys, right? So they could be a very high paid, high ranking person responsible for compliance in an organization. So just because it's at the bottom of the pyramid doesn't mean that those people are in a hierarchy rank that is different. And so hopefully, again, that'll fit in here well with this next piece, because when you're hiring human resources, we typically are going to be generalists. Your generalists are going to have a range of skills. We call ourselves player coaches, because a lot of times we're kind of, I call it flying high and flying low. So there's times I have to be in the strategy, but then I have to come down to execution. Times I'll be back in the strategy, and then I'll be down in helping a manager with an employee problem, right? So you're kind of high and low. We call that a player coach. So that is the type of role they play. We can be tactical and strategic, like I just described. We can be also an employee resource, a leader resource. And a lot of times you'll see generalists in smaller companies. You will see generalists a lot of times in bigger companies, but a lot of times they have a specialist model. They may or may not have generalists in that. Most companies do, the larger ones, but some still have very specialized HR roles. Now, that's the specialist, right? So our specialists, they have specialist skills. They can also be a player coach. They also may be consultants. Like myself, I've transitioned from corporate into doing consulting. So I have a range of background and different roles I've played. And now I like being more of a specialist, which is why I like consulting, right? So we can, again, be tactical and strategic. A lot of times your specialists, they can be a employee or a leader resource, but a lot of times your specialists are working more closely with leadership teams in terms of really shaping out the strategy. So, like for instance, in an HR function, you might have a total rewards leader in a bigger company, and that total rewards leader is working with usually other leaders in the organization, with finance and whomever, to either bring in different offerings, make sure that we're managing the HR resources appropriately, etc. So in specialists, you can see them in both small and large companies. But again, just kind of give me a profile. So like in my bigger companies, I might have like a compensation person, a recruiter, a payroll specialist, and a benefits person, right? That's just an example. In a smaller company, I have a generalist, and that generalist typically would do all of those functions because they have more generalized skills. So, as you think about your needs for human resources, again, wherever you're at and the phase of your business, just think about it. Do I need more of a generalist or a specialist? Some of the more strategic items are typically are going to be more to the specialist realm, whereas I just need to, I call it keep the lights on. I need to just make sure I have the basics, I have the compliance set, and I have somebody that can keep up with that. That's kind of more on the generalist side. But I don't want to devalue the generalist at all, because the generalist can also be strategic. But think about that just in terms of your needs, of where do you have the greatest need, and do you need more of a generalist or specialist HR skill set? Okay. So some of the pitfalls of hiring HR, and I'm just going to go through this quickly for you. One is, again, you have to think about HR. HR is not administration. HR is much more than administration. What I explain to people in terms of thinking about HR is we always work backwards. So whatever your goal is it defines the activities or the actions that occur. So like I'll give you an example. I had one of my former CEOs, and she was like, well, just give them the form. I won't give you the whole story. She's like, just give them the form. And I'm like, what do you mean give them the form? She's like, well, don't you just give them the form? I'm like, no, I don't just give them the form. I have to understand what's going on first to figure out which forms they need, right? So, and it wasn't even about the forms. There was a benefit component. It was a lot more to it. Is the point of the story? But the person thought that it was, oh well, just give them the form. Like, what's taking you so long? Just give them the form. Like, well, it's a lot more than that that I have to really understand before we can proceed, right? So think of it again, it's not an admin function solely. There's part of it that is administrative, but it's the output, not the input. The other pitfall is understanding the volume and complexity of your needs, like I talked about before. Sometimes I've had companies, they hire someone because they're like, great, you can do this payroll for me and what have you, and then they add more responsibility, and then they end up with a person who really has not really kept things up like it should, and then you're out of compliance and you got to call me to fix it, right? So again, just think about that, because sometimes a lot of times we underestimate the needs. One thing you can do there is, I do, and I'm not just plugging myself here, but a lot of times I will give people consultations and tell them what type of HR resources they need. So that is an option, that you can also find a mentor or contractor or somebody that can speak with you, and then they can break it down and give you some recommendations of, hey, I think you need a specialist or generalist, etc. The other thing is, don't rely on sales reps to tell you about your HR needs, because sales reps, I love them. Sales is one of my favorite functions of the business, but they are not HR professionals most times. So they are not there to tell you what you need. They're there to tell you what services they have that they believe align to your needs. So, and the reason why I say that is because salespeople are salespeople. That's what they're there to do. So they can certainly help you understand how their product or service will help you or benefit you, but they may not be able to tell you the full picture, or willing to, because again, they're there to tell you about their stuff. And then again, the other common pitfall is having no internal expertise. Even if you outsource or you contract, you're going to have somebody that is a liaison or helps to make sure that that relationship and the person that you're hiring has what they need to be successful. So that's some of the pitfalls. Okay. And then some of the ways to mitigate that, again, HR is a function, not a person. HR needs will evolve. Just, get that and accept that. And again, I think that's a little bit of relief too, because then you realize that you don't have to solve for everything today, that you can put a plan and a pathway in place to grow into your HR pants, right? Also, sales reps are sell. They there to sell. We love them, but that's what they do. And then, like you said, you're going to need that internal expertise, even if it's you, to just help guide and to help that person to get the insight they need to shape things custom for your organization. Because we don't just do HR. Like, there's no HR off the shelf product I come and just, implement. Everybody that I work with is very different. I may do some of the same things, I may have some of the same responsibilities, but it's going to look different from company to company. And you, as a business owner, get the privilege of shaping out what that looks like, which is great. Because, like I have some clients that they're really big into the culture and having transparency and really some of these really great leadership practices that have evolved in recent years. I love working with those clients, right? Because that they're setting that intention and I'm helping them to put action around that so that it becomes real, right? So some links and resources for you. This is by far an excellent, one of the best in the country, by the way. So every state has a Department of Labor, a DOL website that will have all of their employment laws. They'll have links to anything that you need. Now, you still have to go in and know how to navigate and find the information, but they're all pretty good. But Ohio's is actually very good. So kudos to Ohio. Our information is great. It's very well organized and it's very easy to access. And they actually have a resource on the page, and this is definitely something I would flag for all of you, is it's a guide they have called Hiring Your First or Next Employee. It's excellent. It goes through each phase, kind of similar, a little bit different than I did for the phases, but I'll give you just a quick breakdown of this and tell you why I think it's so great. So it will go in and it will tell you about that area of HR, and it'll give you almost a checklist of the things that you need to do and that you need to make sure that you're taking care of. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to go back a minute. So anything that you need, if you're ever doing any hiring, it'll walk you through it and it asks you questions that you can answer. This is actually something, and I would just, this is my opinion. You can tell me if you try it out and you find out differently, but this is the reason why I really like this so much is because they've laid it out so well. I think that it helps you as a business owner understand all of the things you're going to be responsible for, but it's also something that you don't have to be a 24-year vet to understand. I think it's very, very straightforward and very clear. So, just keep that in mind. Don't be intimidated by it. You can always ask questions, but I think the resource itself is great. So it will start to break down and give you some ideas again, as wherever you're at in a different, think about that life cycle I showed earlier, the employee life cycle. There's going to be different things you're going to run into that are compliance related. So I just have a quick breakdown, and again, you'll have the slides and everything as well. But I have a quick breakdown of just some of the compliance things you'll run into. So when you're talking about things like job descriptions, salary classifications, oh, am I exempt or non-exempt? All of those types of things, those are going to be like Department of Labor. Some other things I may use, Bureau of Labor Statistics for salary ranges, or there's a wage and hour division of Department of Labor as well, or ONET is another one that I use often that I can do some good research on. Getting into my HR systems, payroll, timekeeping, things like that. That's my wage of hour. That's my Department of Labor, right? So I won't go through all of these, but it just gives you a high level understanding of some of the areas of your business and then some of those compliance items that you want to make sure that you are mindful of, how to manage and administer them, or you get somebody who does. And like, for instance, recruiting is a great one because if you get a contract and it has requirements for hiring, you might have to have certain diversity goals that you hit for your recruiting efforts. In certain states like California and Colorado and New York and Illinois, right? There's very specific things around pay equity. And, there's things that you can and can't ask them in those states in terms of previous salary, right? So there's all these things to know and to make sure that you're compliant. And again, as you grow, all of this grows with you, right? And again, that's where you typically need more people or someone dedicated. Alrighty. I think another big one for you is E-Verify. Another link I would definitely recommend. I'm sorry I didn't have it up here, but set up an E-Verify account if you're going to hire, and that's where you do what we call the Form I-9, and that verifies that you're eligible to work in the U.S. So again, that's very important, particularly so that you can avoid any sort of fines or penalties that might be incurred by hiring someone who's not a legal resident or able to work legally in the US. Yeah. FMLA, you typically don't have to worry about that until you get to 50 or more people. But again, that's some things to think about. It just even on the benefits, PTO, fringe, things like that. Think about what that strategy looks like over time. Like I have one client, they were only offering medical and dental. And then as they grew, they added on vision, and then they added on retirement, and then they added on more PTO, right? So that can be part of your growth strategy as well, and anticipating and projecting those costs of adding on additional benefits. And those additional benefits are going to help you attract and retain people. Because even though you're a small business, or maybe not, maybe some of you are in a very large business, but I'll assume we're mostly small businesses. Even if you're hiring for, I'll just say, an accountant, that accountant can work anywhere. So your competition for talent are the big companies, even though you're a small company. So it doesn't mean that you have to always compete apples for apples, but there are things that people typically have grown to expect or need from their employers that is going to be attractive to get them to come to your organization and to stay. Okay. So I have a quick poll question here to see if you've been following along. So if you wouldn't mind, if you want to open up the chat box below, and if you wouldn't mind typing in your response to our poll question. So the poll question today is: human resources is a function of the business responsible for the people parts of the business, or human resources is B, a person who handles all complaints, plans parties, and files paperwork.
Well, it certainly looks like people have paid attention.
All right. Awesome blossom. Thank you. You are absolutely correct. And again, I just shared that because you as a business owner, we're your partners. We're the ones that can help you to navigate and coordinate and pull those people resources together. And it's so great when you see it all work together, and the HR isn't the bottleneck, and we're not waiting to hire and all these other things. So trust me, there's a wonderful relationship that you can have here. And so just to close us out, I just have some resources for you. I won't go through them, but I'll just give you a high level. Again, for pay and labor updates, I have a couple of resources. There's also a link in the middle there for the state-specific Department of Labor, because you can search it by state. The reason why that's so important is because, again, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this. Your laws follow the employee, not the employer. So if I am an employer based in Ohio and I hire an employee in Atlanta, Georgia, I am now on the hook for Georgia's Department of Labor laws, taxes, etc., right? So that's the most important thing to remember, and that's why you want to make sure that you're making those decisions wisely and you know what you're getting into. If I hire an employee in Ohio, I'm responsible, and they live in Ohio, then I'm responsible for the compliance and those things related to Ohio. One thing to keep in mind too is if you hire an employee, we'll just use my example, say I hire them, we're both in Ohio, but then that person moves to California and I still choose to keep them as an employee, I am now doing business in California and I am responsible for the taxes, the compliance, and everything as it relates to California, right? So, again, these are just some quick illustrations of some things to keep in mind because these are where we help to make sure you have good policies and you have things in place to protect you in that area. Or if you're okay with that person moving to California, we'll make sure that you navigate those waters effectively. Or you can look them up yourself, right? Comp and pay benefit practices, a couple of resources that I use there. World of Work, sorry, SHRM and ONET. I mentioned that as well, and then some payroll services. Now, you'll see a lot of these are payroll providers, but believe it or not, they have great information. A lot of them have articles. They'll keep you up on compliance. They'll let you know when certain things are due. So if you're even just doing your own payroll right now, they're great resources to keep up with any sort of changes that are going on. And a lot of them are very good payroll providers as well if you would choose to outsource that. So we'll make sure that you have these resources. And that's what we have for you here today. Thank you for your time. We will leave it open for some questions. And
Okay, you have one right off.
yeah,
Is an I-9 necessary if you are hiring a 1099?
no, no. If you're 1099, your contractors do not require an I-9.
Actually, I think if your 1099 is an LLC, which a lot of people are doing now, they are responsible for the I-9.
There is no I-9 for contractors. It's
No,
just,
I mean, if they're working for their own business,
well,
their own business is responsible.
the I-9 is where like they'll ask you for your driver's license, social security card, like they'll
Right.
verify your identity. So there's really no need for it unless you're actually hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, like I said, I-9, there's all these acronyms. There's like I-9 and then there's W-4. So W-4 is your tax form for your hires. That's where they will fill out their tax exemptions to tell you what to take out of their pay. So that definitely would apply for an employee. A lot of times, if you have a contractor, a lot of times we leave the taxes to them. So.
Oh, she says, I only have 1099s, but try to think HR wise for all we do with our contractors. And that makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does. Now, one thing you have to think about is there's these there's certain situations where in the legal term they give it, I've heard, is called like piercing the veil, right? So if you have contractors, there's there you want to make sure that you are treating them like contractors, so they have to have a certain amount of autonomy in their work and they actually fit the definition of contractor. The reason why I say that is because if you have contractors and you treat them like employees, then there could be an argument that they are employees. There actually have been a lot of case law on that. One of the most famous ones was Microsoft, where they had interns and they were calling them interns, but the interns were doing the work like a regular full time employee, but they weren't getting the benefits and those other things like a full time employee. And they sued and won. Right. So those are extreme. When I say that, I don't want, I'm not the scary HR person. Like everything you do is going to get you sued, right? But I do share that just so you know what sort of liability or risk you might be entering in when you're making certain decisions. So when I'm talking about that is just make sure that you know the definition of independent contractor and that you're following that in how you work with those people. Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, would it help to have them sign a contract with stipulations to avoid the issue?
Yes, for sure. The contract is very helpful. Make sure that both parties are understanding what the relationship is, especially around like things like confidentiality. Like if they're an independent contractor, they'll you supposed to not dictate their work to a certain degree. Not that you can't tell them how to do a process or procedure, but they're supposed to have a certain amount of autonomy in work. So I would just say make sure that you're following that and you have a good agreement and both parties know what's expected out of that agreement. But yeah, I have people that I've worked with for years and we always make sure we have agreements. That's just one of my principles is I just want to make sure before we enter into anything that everybody's on the same page just so that we don't have any things to slow us down.
Okay, I think you've answered all the questions.
Awesome. Well, thank
So,
you, Mo. Appreciate your time as always. And like I said, don't be afraid of this HR thing. It's actually a lot of fun. And then like I said, when you start seeing it all come together and all of your vision and your values and how it all starts to grow and you see your business grow, it's just very rewarding. So hopefully you've gotten some great resources out of today. Appreciate your time.
well, thank you so much, Dina. It's been very enlightening, I think. We've learned a lot, and hopefully people will use this information. You've
Yeah,
given them a lot of resources, so that's fantastic. So thank you again.
thank you.